He made me wear a red wig every night and tried to turn me into Ariel. Hey everyone, welcome back to Reddit Bit. Have you ever wondered what would happen if your partner became so obsessed with a fictional character that they tried to transform you into their fantasy? Imagine being in a relationship where your identity slowly gets erased and replaced with a Disney princess. At what point does someone's preference cross the line into obsession? When do you realize you're disappearing beneath someone else's fantasy? This isn't just another relationship story. It's a shocking journey through control, identity, and ultimately finding the strength to say, I want to be me. So grab your popcorn, hit that like button, and dive deep with us into this incredible Reddit story that will make you question the boundaries in your own relationships. Let's dive in.
My name is Helen, and this is the story of how my ex-boyfriend tried to transform me into a real-life Disney princess. Looking back now, at 23, I can see all the red flags I missed when I was 19, but hindsight is always crystal clear, isn't it? I grew up in a pretty conservative household in a small town outside Seattle. My parents were deeply religious, and dating wasn't exactly something we discussed openly at the dinner table. So when I finally moved to Seattle for college, I was, well, let's just say inexperienced is putting it kindly. I met Nathan during my sophomore year at the University of Washington. I was working part-time at this trendy coffee shop near campus called The Daily Grind to help pay for my graphic design classes. Nathan was a regular, this tall, blue-eyed computer science major with messy brown hair who always ordered the same thing, a double espresso with a splash of vanilla. You know, most people who pretend to like espresso just get a latte. I teased him one day after watching him try not to wince at the bitterness. He laughed, his eyes crinkling at the corners in this adorably genuine way. Busted. I'm trying to look sophisticated, but honestly, I'd rather have a hot chocolate with whipped cream. That was it. That simple moment of honesty in a sea of college students trying so hard to be cool, it completely charmed me. We started talking every day when he'd come in, and eventually, he asked me out. Our first few months together were like something out of a rom-com. He'd surprise me with little sketches, terrible ones, the guy couldn't draw to save his life. But the effort was sweet, leave me notes in my textbooks, and actually listened when I talked about my dream of becoming a graphic novelist. My roommate Zoe was constantly rolling her eyes at how cute we were. If you two get any more adorable, I'm going to need insulin shots, she'd joke. Then, about 4 months into our relationship, Disney released their live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. Nathan suggested we see it opening weekend. I wasn't particularly excited. I'd liked the cartoon as a kid, but I wasn't a huge Disney fan. Still, it seemed like a normal date night. During the movie, I noticed Nathan was unusually captivated. He didn't check his phone once, a miracle for him, and seemed completely absorbed in the story. When we left the theater, he couldn't stop talking about it. The actress who played Ariel was incredible, right? And the way they did the underwater scenes? The colors were amazing. The original was good, but this was next level, he gushed. I nodded along, thinking it was cute to see him so enthusiastic about something. Yeah, it was better than I expected, I agreed. The following week, he suggested watching the original animated version at his apartment. I thought it was sweet. He was showing interest in something I'd mentioned enjoying as a kid. We ordered pizza, cuddled on his couch, and watched the movie. It was a perfectly normal date night, but then he wanted to watch it again the next weekend. And the weekend after that. And suddenly, there was Little Mermaid merchandise appearing in his apartment. First just a poster, then a coffee mug, then several collectible figurines. I just think the animation style is really impressive, he explained when I raised an eyebrow at the growing collection. And the music is classic. I didn't think much of it. People like what they like, right? And it was kind of endearing that this cool, confident guy had a soft spot for a Disney princess. One night, about 6 months into our relationship, we were at his place watching TV when he casually said, "You know, you'd look amazing with red hair." I laughed it off. My brown hair is pretty boring, but I don't think I could pull off red. He didn't push it that night, but the comment stuck with me. It was the first hint of what was coming. By the 7-month mark, Nathan had the entire Little Mermaid soundtrack on his playlist. He'd sing, part of your world in the shower. He started calling me his Little Mermaid as a pet name, which I thought was cute at first. Then came the gifts, a seashell necklace, just like Ariel's, a blue dress that he said reminded him of her outfit on land, mermaid-themed jewelry. I appreciated the thoughtfulness, even if the theme was getting a bit repetitive. "You have such a beautiful voice," he told me one night after I sang along to the radio in his car. "It reminds me of Ariel." I blushed at the compliment, not realizing that in his mind, the comparison wasn't just a compliment, it was becoming a blueprint. By our 8-month anniversary, Nathan's interest in The Little Mermaid had evolved from a quirky hobby into something that dominated our relationship. Every date somehow involved the movie or the character of Ariel. We'd go to the aquarium, and he'd point out fish that reminded him of the film. We'd walk by the harbor, and he'd talk about how the water made him think of Ariel's home. The first time I realized things were getting weird was when he bought me a red wig for my birthday. "Try it on," he urged, his eyes lit with an excitement I hadn't seen before. To please him, I did. His reaction was intense. He couldn't take his eyes off me, and that night, our intimate moments took on a different tone. "Say something about wanting to be part of the human world," he whispered. I laughed awkwardly, but played along. I thought it was just roleplay, something to spice things up. I didn't understand that for Nathan, the fantasy was becoming more real than our actual relationship. After that night, his requests became more frequent and specific. He wanted me to wear the wig more often. He bought me a purple shell-shaped bikini top that he begged me to wear when we were alone. Our sex life became increasingly centered around his Ariel fantasy, with the movie soundtrack often playing in the background. When I didn't wear the wig one night, he seemed disappointed. "I just thought you might want to make things special," he said, making me feel guilty for not participating in his fantasy. Then came the hair dye conversation. "I think you should consider dyeing your hair red," he suggested one evening as we were studying in his apartment. "Not just for me, I think it would really suit your complexion." "Nathan, I don't want to dye my hair." "I like my natural color," I replied. "Just think about it? Maybe just try some temporary color first." To compromise, I bought some washout red hair color and used it one weekend. Nathan was ecstatic, taking dozens of photos of me and telling me how beautiful I looked. But when I washed it out on Sunday night, his disappointment was palpable. "Why didn't you keep it?" "It looked so good," he complained. "Because I have classes tomorrow, and I don't want to show up with bright red hair." He didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. Things got worse when I discovered he'd posted several photos of me in the red wig on his Instagram without asking me. The caption read, "My real-life Ariel hashtag blessed hashtag Disney IRL. Nathan, what the hell?" I confronted him. "You can't just post pictures of me like that without asking." "I thought you'd be flattered," he said, looking genuinely confused. "Everyone's saying how beautiful you look." I scrolled through the comments and felt my stomach turn. Most were innocent enough, but there were a few that made me uncomfortable. "Dude, you're living every guy's dream." "Does she sing for you too? Get her the full costume next." It felt like I was being turned into some kind of fetish object for public consumption. I made him take the photos down, but the damage was done. People from our classes had seen them, and I got knowing looks for weeks afterward. The situation escalated when he created what he called a lookbook, essentially a list of clothing items he wanted me to buy and wear when I visited him. The list included a purple top that showed cleavage, green tight shorts, and specific shell-shaped jewelry. He even included links to where I could purchase these items. "I'm not made of money, Nathan," I protested when I saw the prices. "I'm working part-time at a coffee shop to pay for art supplies." "I thought you'd want to look nice for me," he replied, making me feel guilty again. What he didn't understand was that every dollar I spent on his Ariel fantasy was a dollar not going toward my dream of attending a summer graphic novel workshop in Portland. I'd been saving for months, and my fund was dwindling because of his request. My coworker and friend Mia noticed something was off when I started picking up extra shifts. "What's with the sudden need for cash?" she asked as we closed up the shop one night. "You look exhausted." I hesitated, but finally opened up about Nathan's growing obsession. I showed her the lookbook on my phone. "Helen, that's not normal." she said bluntly. He's not seeing you anymore. He's seeing some cartoon character he wants you to be. But he says he loves me, I protested weakly. Does he love you, or does he love the idea of turning you into a fictional character? Her question hit me hard because I didn't have an answer. And for the first time, I started to wonder if Nathan loved me at all, or if he just saw me as a canvas for his obsession. The breaking point came when he insisted I buy a $200 Ariel costume from a high-end costume shop for Halloween. That's almost half my rent, I told him. I can't justify spending that on a costume I'll wear once. His reaction shocked me. He didn't just get disappointed, he got angry. If you really cared about making me happy, you'd do this one thing, he snapped. It's not like I ask for much. When I still refused, he gave me this silent treatment for 3 days. 3 whole days of ignored texts and calls because I wouldn't buy an overpriced mermaid costume. During those 3 days, I had time to think. I started to see how our relationship had changed, how everything had become about fulfilling his fantasy. I realized I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a conversation that didn't somehow circle back to Ariel or the Little Mermaid. When Nathan finally broke his silence and acted like nothing had happened, I tried to have a serious conversation about his fixation on Ariel and how it was affecting our relationship. You're overreacting, he dismissed. Lots of people have fantasies. At least I'm including you in mine. That comment stung more than he knew. Including me, by trying to transform me into someone else, didn't feel like inclusion at all. The final straw came on a rainy November evening. We were in his apartment, and I'd reluctantly worn the red wig and a blue dress he'd bought me. We'd been intimate, with the movie playing in the background as usual. Afterward, as we lay there, he started talking about our future in a way that made my blood run cold. I think we should name our first daughter Ariel, he said, completely serious. Wouldn't that be perfect? I sat up, suddenly feeling exposed and uncomfortable. Nathan, don't you think that's a bit much? Naming our hypothetical child after a character you want me to pretend to be in bed. He looked genuinely confused by my reaction. But it's a beautiful name, and it would mean something special to us. Special to us? Or special to you? I challenged. This whole Ariel thing, it's not about us. It's about your fantasy. Why are you being like this? He asked, his tone hardening. I thought you enjoyed it too. I enjoyed making you happy, I admitted, but it's gone too far. I feel like I'm disappearing and all you see is Ariel. That's ridiculous, he scoffed. You're being dramatic. But I wasn't being dramatic. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I saw what had been happening over the past year. I'd been slowly erased, replaced by a fictional character. My preferences, my personality, my identity, none of it mattered as long as I could fulfill his fantasy. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. What are you talking about? This relationship. I can't be your Ariel anymore. I want to be Helen. His expression changed then, from confusion to something darker. So you're breaking up with me because I have a preference? Because I know what I like. I'm breaking up with you because you don't seem to like me anymore, I replied, my voice stronger than I expected. You like the idea of me as someone else. What followed was one of the most painful arguments of my life. Nathan alternated between anger and pleading, between accusing me of overreacting and promising he would tone things down. But something had broken inside me, the spell was lifted, and I couldn't unsee the truth. I left his apartment that night with the red wig in my hand. As I walked to my car in the rain, I threw it in a trash can. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt enormously significant. The aftermath wasn't easy. Nathan bombarded me with texts and calls, ranging from apologies to accusations. He showed up at the coffee shop with Little Mermaid-themed gifts, thinking that would win me back. He even sent a handwritten letter where he mentioned his love for me and the Little Mermaid, but mostly you, as if that was reassuring. My friends helped me stay strong. Zoe and Mia took turns screening my calls and keeping me busy so I wouldn't fall back into the relationship. They reminded me of my worth when I doubted myself. IT took months before I stopped feeling guilty, before I stopped wondering if I'd overreacted. But gradually, I reclaimed myself. I focused on my studies, doubled down on my graphic novel project, and even managed to save enough for that workshop in Portland. The most ironic part? My first published graphic novel, which came out last year, is about a young woman finding her voice after being silenced by someone who claimed to love her. It's not explicitly about my experience with Nathan, but the themes are there, transformed into something that has helped other people recognize unhealthy patterns in their own relationships. Now, for years later, I can look back on that relationship with clarity. I understand that what Nathan did was a form of objectification. He wasn't seeing me as a person, but as a vessel for his fantasy. It wasn't love, it was obsession. I'm in a healthy relationship now with someone who loves me for exactly who I am. And yes, we occasionally watch Disney movies together, but they're just movies, not blueprints for who I should become. Sometimes I wonder if Nathan ever realized how unhealthy his obsession was, if he ever got help, or if he found someone else to transform. Part of me hopes he's grown and changed. Another part of me worries for whoever came after me, but mostly, I'm just grateful that I found the strength to break the surface, to swim away from that toxic situation, and to find my own voice again, not as a Little Mermaid, but as myself.
Oh, what a journey we've just witnessed together. Let's recap what happened. Helen, a young college student with limited relationship experience, meets Nathan, who initially seems like the perfect boyfriend. Then Disney's Little Mermaid enters the picture, and Nathan's interest gradually transforms from casual appreciation to full-blown obsession. The red wig, the clothing demands, the role-playing. Each step taking Helen further away from herself and deeper into Nathan's fantasy world. But what's particularly insidious about this story is how gradually it all happened. Like the proverbial frog in slowly heating water, Helen didn't realize how extreme things had become until she was already deeply entrenched. This is why those outside perspectives from her friends Mia and Zoe were so crucial. They could see what she couldn't. The breaking point. Nathan suggesting they name their future daughter Ariel right after intimate moments where he had her role-playing as the character perfectly illustrates how his fantasy had completely overtaken reality. He couldn't even separate his girlfriend from the fictional character in his most vulnerable moments. The biggest lesson here? Love should never require you to sacrifice your identity. Real love celebrates who you are, not who someone wants you to become. It's about acceptance, not transformation. And it's definitely okay to walk away from anyone who tries to mold you into their fantasy. I'm curious. What would you have done in Helen's situation? Would you have recognized the red flags earlier? Or might you have been just as blind to the gradual escalation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you know someone who might be losing themselves in a relationship, share this video. Sometimes seeing someone else's story can be the wake-up call we need. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to catch more incredible Reddit stories every day. Thanks for watching, and remember, in relationships and in life, always stay true to yourself.